For centuries, humanity had walked among the stars with pride, power, and a dangerous curiosity that both inspired and terrified the other species of the galaxy. They were everywhere on war fronts, in peace negotiations, on trade routes, even in forbidden zones no one else dared to enter. Their technology was unmatched, their military feared, and their willpower unbreakable. They were not the first species to explore the stars, but they were the only ones who changed the rules wherever they went. The Council of Galactic Unity had long known that without humanity's presence, chaos might erupt, for humanity had unknowingly become the thread that tied the galaxy together. But no one expected the silence. One day, without war, warning, or even a message, the humans vanished. Their ships' massive war carriers, medical frigates, diplomatic vessels left orbit one after another. Entire human colonies shut down, their cities empty and their communications blacked out. Trade stations that once buzzed with their activity turned cold and lifeless. Even the most advanced scanners couldn't track them. They had simply disappeared into deep space, far beyond known maps. The galaxy froze in confusion. What had caused them to leave? There was no declaration, no crisis, not even a goodbye. Rumors spread faster than light. Some said humanity had found something greater than this galaxy, something beyond the stars that called to them like a voice in the dark. Others believed that the humans had grown tired of always being at the center, of always being called to fight, to lead, to suffer for others' wars. And then there were darker whispers, ones that no one wanted to believe, that humanity had not left for peace, but to prepare for something no one else was ready for. In the following days, the balance of power began to shake. The Krylax Enclave, once held in check by humanity's military presence, started expanding aggressively into weaker systems. The once friendly auxiliary traders increased their prices, no longer fearing human regulations. The Viscari swarm, known for its destructive nature, began testing its strength again on nearby moons, its tentacles reaching out where humans had once drawn the line. A sense of unease fell over the galaxy like a shadow. There was no war yet, but the absence of humanity had created a silence too heavy to ignore. Every leader, every general, every diplomat found themselves wondering the same thing: what happens when the species that kept the peace simply walks away? Deep inside, the Central Galactic Council, meetings turned into panic sessions. Alliances started to weaken. Old rivalries, once buried under human pressure, slowly began to surface. No one trusted the others enough to hold back. But still, no one moved openly, not yet. They were all waiting, each wondering if the humans would return, if this was a test or a trap. Because everyone remembered what humanity was capable of. They remembered the Battle of 10 Suns, where a single human fleet held off 5 armadas for 12 days. They remembered the time a human envoy stopped a planetary war with nothing but a story of Earth's own past. They remembered what humans did when threatened, and more importantly, what they did when left alone to plan. The strangest part of it all was that no one, not even those closest to humans, could understand the reason behind their withdrawal. Not the allies who had fought beside them, not the species who had studied alongside them, not even the diplomats who had shared their homes. It was as if humanity had vanished not just from space, but from understanding itself. As the weeks turned to months, unease turned to dread. No one dared to fill the space humans had left behind. It was as if that space still belonged to them. Fleets would avoid the human sectors, even though they were now empty. Traders would still speak in past tense, as if the humans were watching from somewhere unseen. Children across planets were told stories of humans not as monsters, but as protectors who had simply walked away. Secretly, many hoped they would come back. Because deep inside, everyone knew the truth they didn't want to say out loud. The galaxy without humans felt like a ship without a captain. It floated, it moved, but it no longer had direction. And still, no one had answers. No evidence of where the humans had gone, no messages sent, no beacons activated. Only the occasional flash on long-range scanners that showed movement at the edge of the galaxy, too far, too fast, and too organized to be a random phenomenon. Some believed it was them, watching, waiting, preparing. Others said it was something new, something humanity had become after leaving everyone behind. the galaxy didn't know which idea was worse. But every time a star flickered strangely, every time a strange signal echoed through the void, the same fear returned. What if humanity was not truly gone? What if they were coming back with something greater, something beyond understanding? And if so, would they come as friends or something else entirely? In the silence left behind, the galaxy didn't just feel their absence, it feared it. And so, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what would come next. The galaxy was not the same after humanity left. A strange kind of silence spread across the stars, not just the silence of empty ships or abandoned colonies, but a deeper silence, the kind that comes before something big, something no one can understand or explain. Species that had once relied on humans for protection, trade, or even simple cooperation now found themselves alone, unsure of their future. Even the bravest warriors and the smartest leaders felt that something was wrong, but they couldn't say what. The humans had not left behind destruction or war, but their absence created something far worse: uncertainty. In every corner of the galaxy, strange changes began to unfold. The peaceful zones between rival empires started to shrink. Ancient enemies, once held back by the threat of human retaliation, began testing boundaries again. Small border skirmishes popped up between the Krylax and the Norvane, while trade convoys vanished near the Viscari region with no explanation. The Council of Galactic Unity, which had always worked under human pressure to maintain peace, struggled to make decisions. Without humans to push through the hard choices, the Council became slow, confused, and divided. Members argued over what should be done, and most of them were afraid to act in case it led to full-scale war. Diplomats who used to rely on human negotiators now found themselves unable to resolve even the simplest disputes. It was as if the galaxy's spine had been removed, and no one knew how to stand anymore. Pirates and smugglers thrived in the new chaos. Without the fear of human patrol ships, entire regions of space became lawless. Stations that once welcomed all species with open arms now closed their ports, afraid of being attacked or looted. Some species tried to rise quickly, hoping to take the place humans had left behind, but none could match their reach, their knowledge, or their silent power. A few even tried to copy human tactics or build fleets like theirs, but the results were clumsy and weak. Humanity had done things their own way, and no one else could imitate it. The strangest thing was that, even in their absence, humans still seemed to control the galaxy. Everyone was waiting for their return, or at least for a message, a sign, anything that would explain their sudden disappearance. But nothing came. It was as if the stars had swallowed them. Yet, the fear of them never left. Some believed that humanity was watching from the shadows, silently observing how the galaxy behaved without them. That thought kept many leaders from making bold moves, afraid they might trigger something they couldn't stop. There were even secret reports, unconfirmed sightings of strange ships moving in the farthest sectors of space, ships with no markings, no communication, and technology that moved faster than any known engine. Some believed these were human vessels, evolved and hidden, making sure the galaxy didn't go too far. But there was no proof, only fear, and in fear, the galaxy held its breath. Among all this, there were a few who truly missed humanity, not for their strength or their weapons, but for their strange sense of balance. Humans were not perfect. They made mistakes. They could be unpredictable and at times dangerous. But they also believed in ideas like honor, freedom, and loyalty. They helped the weak, even when it wasn't required. They protected planets that held no value just because innocent lives were at risk. That kind of thinking didn't exist much in the galaxy anymore. Without humans, some species began to forget what justice looked like. The Vorexans, known for their wisdom and deep thought, started sending messages to the stars, hoping some human might hear them. They didn't ask for help, they only asked if humanity was still out there. But there was no answer, only silence, and that silence grew heavier each passing day. On a cold moon in the Ralver sector, a hidden observatory picked up a strange signal. It was weak, broken, and faded quickly, but it carried something familiar, a rhythm, a pulse, something that reminded the researchers of Earth's ancient Morse code. They tried to decode it, but the message was too short. It was just one word, soon. The signal disappeared before they could trace it. The message spread quickly through secret channels. Some dismissed it as a trick or a glitch. Others believed it was real. That single word set off a storm of preparation. Armies began to train harder. Fleets were upgraded. Defensive stations were built near border zones. No one knew what soon meant, but everyone knew who it had to be. No other species would send such a message, not with that kind of quiet warning. The galaxy started to prepare not for war, not for peace, but for something else, something that had never happened before. And in the middle of it all, there were whispers of a group that had never left. Humans who had stayed behind, hidden among other species, living quietly and waiting for the right time. No one knew who they were or where they were hiding, but the idea of it was enough to shake the strongest minds. Because if some humans were still here, then maybe the others weren't far behind. As all these pieces moved slowly into place, the galaxy stood on a thin edge. The silence that had once felt peaceful now felt dangerous. The calm had become too calm. Everyone knew something was coming, but no one knew what. And in this quiet before the storm, the stars seemed to whisper the same question again and again. What had humanity planned, and when would they return? In the farthest reaches of space, where the stars glowed faintly and silence ruled the void, the first signs of change began to appear like whispers in the dark. It started not with loud battles or blazing weapons, but with small, strange events that no one could explain. A mining station near the edge of the Void Nebula reported that all of its systems had gone offline for precisely 6 minutes, then returned without damage, but the power log showed a massive energy surge, one that didn't match any known technology. The engineers were confused, but what truly frightened them was a message that had been left behind in their databanks. It wasn't in any known language, yet somehow everyone who read it understood the same thing: we are watching. The council tried to suppress the report, calling it a malfunction, but the story spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Other reports followed quickly: ships that vanished for hours, only to reappear in perfect condition, with no memory of the missing time, satellites that picked up signals in frequencies long thought unreachable, and unknown objects moving at impossible speeds just beyond the reach of scanners. Something had started to shift, and no one could stop it. Across the stars, the fear of humanity's return turned from quiet whispers to urgent meetings. Governments of powerful species began to suspect that the humans were never truly gone. The Xalari High Command held emergency talks as one of their Black Ops fleets went completely dark near the abandoned Terran border. No distress signals, no escape pods, just silence like the fleet had vanished into thin air. The location where it disappeared became a forbidden zone overnight, but scavenger ships that entered secretly came back shaking in fear, claiming they had seen massive shadows that didn't match any shit known to the galaxy. Some described shapes like giant beasts with metallic skin, others spoke of being watched by unseen eyes, and a few simply never returned. These were not just stories anymore. Something was happening, and those who had mocked the idea of humans still being out there began to rethink everything. In the core worlds of the Varn Dominion, a scientist named Relka discovered a strange anomaly in the gravitational patterns of nearby systems. The readings hinted that a large object, possibly a ship, was moving between star systems without any known propulsion system. But the strange part wasn't the movement, it was the fact that the object seemed to never cast a shadow, never reflect light, and never leave a trail behind. It was as if the universe itself was hiding it. Relka, known for her logic and calm mind, reported her findings with caution, but her own team didn't believe her. A week later, she vanished. Her lab was found intact, her work deleted, and her personal logs replaced with a single file: one word: observe. That word spread quickly among those who had seen other signs. It was clear now whatever was happening wasn't random, and it wasn't the work of pirates, rebels, or some unknown species. It was too precise, too quiet, and far too intelligent. Even the strongest empires began to change their behavior. The aggressive Tharn Empire suddenly pulled back its invasion fleets from contested zones, claiming maintenance issues, but insiders said they were terrified after a single human weapon, left abandoned and deactivated for decades, suddenly came online and destroyed one of their cruisers in a single blast. The weapon had not fired in panic. It had scanned the ship, calculated a threat level, and acted with perfect accuracy. No one knew how it had powered up or why it had remained silent all these years, but now it was active, and the message was clear. The humans had left behind more than memories, they had left guardians. From then on, areas that were once ignored were now treated with extreme caution. Human outposts that had fallen into decay were now considered sacred ground. No one dared to disturb them, and in the quiet darkness of these ruins, motion sensors began to detect footsteps heavy, slow, and human. Rumors began to circulate of people seeing humans on distant moons or isolated stations. They appeared suddenly, spoke little, and left behind tools or messages that helped prevent disasters. A reactor meltdown avoided, a plague cured overnight, a civil war stopped with a silent broadcast that played an old Terran song filled with peace and warning. These were not accidents. These were not ghosts. It was becoming clear to many that humanity hadn't vanished, they had hidden. Hidden so deeply and so cleverly that not even the smartest species could find them. And now they were returning, not with weapons, but with a quiet reminder of their presence. They weren't attacking, yet their influence was growing again, slowly reshaping the galaxy without ever needing to show full strength. Some believed this was part of a larger plan. Perhaps the humans had predicted what would happen after they left. Perhaps they knew the galaxy would fall apart without them, and they had simply stepped back to let it happen, to teach a lesson that words could never explain. The changes weren't just technological or military, they were cultural. Museums across the galaxy began displaying Terran history again. Schools started teaching human philosophies and strategies, and even music from Earth found its way into elite halls and lowly street corners alike. A strange unity began to form not because of fear, but because of respect. The galaxy remembered that humans had always been unpredictable, but they had also been builders, protectors, and allies. And now, as their shadows crept slowly back across the stars, the galaxy was beginning to realize that something greater was coming. Something that had started with whispers and now was growing into a silent storm. On the planet, Juraxis Prime, a group of explorers entered a forgotten human facility buried under centuries of sand and stone. Inside, they found nothing but dust, rust, and silence. But as they walked deeper, lights turned on one by one, and a voice spoke through the static of ancient speakers. "You are being watched. You are not alone. This is not the beginning, it is the return." The explorers ran, leaving behind their equipment in fear. They had not seen anyone, but they had felt it: the eyes, the presence, the calm power that came not from machines, but from something far older and far wiser. The message spread, and it became the final confirmation. The first signs of change had come, and humanity was not a memory, they were a storm waiting to be released. Far away from the shining centers of power and deep beyond the regions that maps dared to name, something ancient began to stir. It started as a hum buried beneath the static of abandoned human satellites drifting in deep space, a low frequency that only the most sensitive machines could detect. No one at first noticed it, not until forgotten probes from long-dead Earth colonies started to send strange signals patterns that matched no language but pulsed in a rhythm too intentional to be dismissed. A few curious researchers picked up the trail, thinking it was only interference, but soon they discovered something that made their blood run cold. The signals came from everywhere at once, bouncing off hidden nodes buried deep inside stars, drifting inside asteroid belts, or wrapped around the gravity of black holes. These weren't messages, they were keys, unlocking systems that had been sleeping for centuries. And then, one by one, old human outposts powered up, systems rebooted, and lights long buried under layers of dust and ice flickered back to life. The once feared ruins of Earth's last known military station, outpost the black dormant turrets, turned their gaze back to the sky. The main reactor, untouched for 100 years, pulsed with life, not because anyone touched it, but because something inside it had been waiting. On distant moons, long-forgotten human bunkers opened their reinforced doors with a hiss of air, and robotic drones the size of buildings rose from underground shelters, their sensors glowing red and blue, scanning the heavens as if seeking an enemy already known. But it wasn't just machines that were waking, it was minds. Deep in cryovaults hidden beneath desert planets and frozen comets, the last human commanders opened their eyes for the first time in generations. Their bodies were pale and stiff from the long sleep, but their minds were sharp, already fed with data gathered during their rest. Each one of them had been prepared long ago, trained for one task only, to return when the time was right and take back what was once theirs. The awakening wasn't loud or messy. It was quiet, careful, and terrifying in its precision. Messages were sent to long-lost ships still hiding behind dead stars, and ancient AI minds that had once served as assistants reactivated and began calculating routes, scanning systems, and preparing for coordinated action. They did not rush. They moved with the patience of a species that had once been forced to learn the hardest lesson: never show your full strength until you must. Across the galaxy, watchers and spies for other species noticed strange energy spikes, unexplained ship movements, and odd readings coming from regions previously believed to be abandoned. They alerted their leaders, and panic began to rise. The fear wasn't just about humans returning, it was about how they were returning so calmly, so confidently, with such complete control over everything they had left behind. The Galactic Council held emergency meetings as more human systems came online. Satellite footage from a rogue drone showed the impossible: a massive Terran battlecruiser, thought to be destroyed in the final war, rising from the sea of a planet where no star charts even placed a human presence. It floated like a ghost above the waters, power surging through its old veins, its hull still bearing the scars of a war fought long ago. And it wasn't alone. Dozens more were waking in the shadows. They bore no flags, no warnings, no signs of peace or war. They simply existed, and in their presence, all other powers felt small. The Council tried to reach out, but the messages went unanswered. Human signals were being sent, yes, but they weren't for diplomacy. They were coordinates, coded instructions, logistical commands. It was clear humanity wasn't coming back to ask for a seat at the table. They were returning to take what was once theirs. What made it worse for the galaxy was that not a single human word of revenge had been spoken. No threats, no demands, no loud broadcasts of superiority, just actions. Machines worked, systems operated, fleets reassembled, and the humans who awoke did so with discipline, following instructions written centuries ago, as if the time between had only been a moment. And yet, it wasn't just cold efficiency that frightened the galaxy, it was the purpose behind it. The Terrans were moving toward something, a goal no one could yet understand. Were they preparing for war? Were they building a new home? Were they seeking revenge, or something far more complicated? No one knew, and that silence became the most dangerous weapon of all. The reawakening wasn't just about strength, it was about intent, and the galaxy had forgotten how unpredictable humanity's intent could be. In a hidden chamber beneath the ruins of the once great Terran capital, a single figure stood alone in the darkness, watching holograms flicker in front of him. His name was Captain Rain, a man of legend, once thought dead. He had been one of the last to enter cryosleep, tasked with watching over the Earth core, and now, as he stepped forward, the systems responded to him like an old friend. He saw the map of the galaxy, updated with new colors and signs of change, and he knew what had to be done. Not with rage, but with resolve, he began to send orders, activating long-dormant alliances, hidden trade routes, and secret archives that held data on every known species. Rain was not interested in ruling the galaxy, he was interested in restoring the balance, a balance he believed only humanity could maintain, because they had already paid the price of arrogance once and learned from it. And so, from the ashes of their silence, humanity rose not in anger, but in quiet strength. Their ships did not fire, their leaders did not shout, and yet the galaxy felt the pressure building like the weight of a coming storm. Entire sectors changed their laws overnight. Planets once defiant now lowered their flags in preparation for what might come. The galaxy had always believed that humanity was dangerous when angry, but it had forgotten how powerful they were when calm. Now, as they moved like shadows across the stars, when the first human footsteps vanished from the known galaxy, it had felt like an ending, final, cold, and uncertain. But now, As the last human systems came online and ancient fleets returned to motion, something shifted across the stars. It was not war. It was not chaos. It was something far deeper and stranger order. The kind of order that came not from power, but from understanding. A quiet wave of calm spread through systems once ruled by fear, not because peace was declared, but because no one dared to move in the presence of the old force returning. Every station, every border, every outpost could feel the tension in the vacuum, as if the galaxy itself had taken a breath and was now holding it, waiting to see what the humans would do next. The strange part wasn't that humanity had returned, it was how they returned. Not loud, not angry, but with a kind of deep silence that made others tremble more than any weapon ever had. From the forgotten edges of space, new Terran messages began to pulse in soft intervals. They weren't threats or demands. They were instructions, mathematical patterns, technology updates, and routes that reconnected broken trade lines. Entire networks of abandoned satellites came alive and began broadcasting coordinates that fixed long-standing navigation errors, ending decades of interstellar accidents and ship disappearances. No one had asked for help. No one expected it. But there it was, human efficiency quietly solving problems that the galaxy had learned to live with. And yet, no one dared to say thank you. Gratitude felt dangerous when it was wrapped in so much unknown purpose. From the political core of the Galactic Council to the pirate dens of the Void Zones, a single question filled every mind. What did humanity want? They weren't taking territory, they weren't attacking, and they weren't speaking to the galaxy's leaders. It was as if they had moved beyond conversation, as if they were too busy preparing for something bigger than diplomacy. Leaders of great empires met in secret, worried not just about Earth's weapons, but Earth's silence. It became clear that humanity had never truly left. They had only hidden, watching the galaxy spin itself into arrogance and confusion, waiting for the perfect moment to step forward again. And now that they had, it was with the kind of quiet confidence that frightened people more than destruction. For the first time in memory, even the most war-hungry species paused their plans and stood still. Pirates retreated. Empires canceled invasions. Borders were no longer enforced by battleships, but by rumors that any act of aggression might awaken more of Earth's long-sleeping power. The humans had not said a word of warning, yet every action carried the weight of a final warning unspoken. The strangest sign of change came from a planet called Viralon 6, where a communication hub once used by humans had been turned into a luxury resort by another species. One day, without warning, the resort shut down. The owners had received a message, just coordinates and a time. They evacuated within hours, and exactly at the given moment, a human vessel landed, reactivating a beacon buried deep beneath the ground. No weapons were fired, no lives lost. But the message was clear. Humanity remembered every place they had touched, and every place would be theirs again, not through conquest, but through purpose. Across the galaxy, similar events unfolded. No demands, no arguments, just action. And the galaxy, helpless to understand this behavior, simply adjusted. Systems that once mocked humans now adopted their technologies, their methods, even their language, hoping to understand the code behind this reawakened race. But no one truly did. The old human phrase, "breathe easy," "we're here now," started to spread again, whispered in fear and hope alike. It wasn't official. It wasn't broadcasted. But it captured something real. A new balance had been born, not with battles or treaties, but with the quiet shift of power returning to its origin. In the science academies of Exeltrax, a young researcher proposed a theory that made many nervous humanity had not disappeared out of weakness, but had stepped away on purpose to test the galaxy, to see what would grow in their absence, and now they were back to judge the result. Others believed something worse, that the humans had seen something coming, something terrible, and had prepared for it in silence, letting the galaxy forget them until it was time to face the real enemy together. Either way, the result was the same. The galaxy breathed differently now. Every decision, every move, every word spoken in the halls of power was shaped by a single consideration: how would the humans react? The most subtle change was cultural. Songs once mocking Terran failures were removed from public playlists. Stories once celebrating the fall of Earth were now told in whispers, if at all. Young alien leaders began studying human history, trying to understand the mind behind the machine. Human literature, once ignored, became valuable, with scholars dissecting every line for signs of meaning. Some even believed the humans had hidden messages in their old books, clues to a future no one else could see. The fear was not of attack but of being left out, because now it seemed humanity was not here to conquer, but to reshape the galaxy without asking permission. And being excluded from that future was a fate worse than war. The galaxy didn't just fear the Terran weapon, it feared the Terran vision. And still, the humans said almost nothing. Their ships moved where they pleased, their systems expanded in quiet order, and their few representatives who did speak offered only polite words, calm suggestions, and kind warnings. But behind every word was a silence that screamed louder than any threat. And when, at last, Earth's main beacon lit the sky once more with a signal strong enough to be seen from every system, the entire galaxy froze. It was a single image in open hand, palm upward, wrapped in stars. No text, no speech, just a message everyone understood. Humanity had returned not to destroy, but to lead. Whether the galaxy followed willingly or not was irrelevant. A new breath had filled the void, one more ancient than many had imagined, and far more powerful than anyone had dared to believe. The galaxy, for the first time in ages, felt something strange hope, born not from peace, but from purpose. The humans were not gods. They were not monsters. They were simply awake, and that was enough to make every star shine a little brighter or darker for the generations to come.